First off, I want to say that I'm probably an Apple fanboy. Like, I started out with the iPhone 6s, saved up, then upgraded to the iPhone XR, and then I upgraded to the iPhone 13. And honestly, I don't think I'm going to switch to Android ever. Like, I would always continue to use an iPhone. Now, I kind of want to say this because in this video, I would be criticizing the iPhone. iPhones are boring. When I switched from my iPhone 6s to the iPhone XR, it took me about a day to get used to it, and after about a week, it felt just like my old phone. And when I switched from my iPhone XR to the 13, it felt less like I just changed my phone. And I think that's partly due to iOS and the fact that a lot of iPhones get a lot of these updates. And that in turn means when you upgrade from a phone with iOS 15 to a newer iPhone with that same iOS, it feels very similar because the way you interact with the phone, the look of the UI, everything's just the same. I mean, yes, with the iPhone 14 Pros, you do get Dynamic Island, which kind of changes the way you use your phone. I mean, it adds that extra layer of functionality with that notch. But really, after like a couple weeks, it would feel the same. I would say that the last time that there was a real change was with the iPhone X, when they switched from the physical home button to gesture navigation. And every iPhone since the iPhone X has kind of followed that same pattern and hasn't really changed. Now personally, I don't think this is that big a deal, because yes, on one hand, nothing's changed too much, but on the other hand, it means every iPhone is easy to use, and people, they like familiar. And we can also talk about how customization is limited. On Android, there's a whole list of things that you could do, but on iPhones, it's not that long. Yes, with iOS 16, there is like a lot more customization options, but it's still not as good as what we have on Android. And then there's the whole talk of how Apple isn't really inventing. Like, we had 12 megapixel cameras for the longest time, or how there's no reverse wireless charging. Like, all of these cool new things that Android phones are trying and implementing, iPhones are just sticking to like the same thing. And all that is true, but still, this whole iPhones are boring isn't that big a deal. I mean, in my opinion. But there is one thing that is. In fact, that's the whole reason I made this video. The selfie camera problem. I've always been of the opinion that iPhones have one of the best cameras. I feel like if you ask anybody who has the best camera in a smartphone, 1 out of every 3 people would probably say the iPhone. And I have enjoyed taking pictures on the main camera of my iPhone 13. In fact, sometimes I'm walking on the road and I see something, I just pull out my phone to take a picture because the cameras are just that good. You can see it for yourself. But the story is kind of different with the selfie camera. True story, when I first got my iPhone 13 and I took a selfie, I felt there was something wrong with my selfie camera, but after asking around, it turned out it's just a thing. And it didn't start with just the iPhone 13, it started with the 12, and this is still present in the iPhone 14s. So there seems to be some sort of problem with the image processing, especially on dark-skinned people. If you take a selfie and you're quick enough, you can see the image before and then after the image processes. And it's really bad, like a 3 out of 10 bad. I'm hoping that it's a software problem, and I've been waiting for like updates to come and fix this, but so far nothing has. And the only fix is using third-party camera apps. So when you use like Instagram's camera or Snapchat's camera, it doesn't have this same image processing problem, and I think the photos are much better. But when you're paying $1,000 for an iPhone, you really don't want to go through that stress. It's just crazy to think that my previous iPhone, the XR, takes better selfies than this one. That's definitely not perfect. Everything else. This one I find pretty interesting. When you watch an Apple commercial for a phone, you listen to the dialogue, you see the great cinematography, you pay attention to the words that they use. You'll almost think that these phones are perfect, but that's not exactly the case. For example, the iPhone 13 has the A15 Bionic chip in it, which is like super powerful and all. But when I'm using my phone as a hotspot for another device and I'm like just scrolling on TikTok, the phone begins to get hot. It's not like ridiculously hot, but it's not warm, it's actually hot. 20 minutes into me playing FIFA Mobile, like just FIFA Mobile, that's not a power intensive app, but 20 minutes in, it starts to heat up. And I'm like, isn't this chip supposed to be like ridiculously powerful, you know? But again, it's not really a big deal, but when you pay attention to how Apple like hypes these phones and then you actually use it, it feels a bit like a letdown. And I'm sure everyone has their own example of this, reasons why iPhones aren't perfect. So I want you to just leave it in the comments and let's see which ones I left out. Now, this isn't some hate video directed at Apple or anything like that. I've said it before, I have used iPhones and will continue to use iPhones because although they have their own negatives, for me and my workflow, they have a lot of positives. But the moral of the story is no phone company is perfect. No phone is perfect. Do not believe the hype. Don't buy phones based on what these companies say because they're just trying to sell to you. But Apple, fix the selfie camera. That's my major problem with the newer iPhones. What's yours? Leave a comment. Who knows, maybe someone at Apple might see this, see our comments, and then fix their problems. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you when you see me.